To get started, this is the pattern I'm going to be working on. It's a basic bodice pattern and we are going to be altering it to fit the style of the jacket that we want. Right on my pattern, I have the waist dart on the pattern and the allowance for the waist dart is 1 inch. I also have my bust dart right here. If you have seen my tutorial on how to make a basic bodice, you would understand this perfectly. And I also have my back pattern on the other side of my pattern paper. Now to move on to the alteration, I'm going to be starting with the back, and for the back neckline I'm going to be using 1/2 inch. This is because this is a jacket and we don't want the neckline to be too deep. I've also gone ahead to do my back tightening to prevent any bulge, and I'm working with 0.75. Initially I drew 1 inch, but I'm going to be using 0.75. You could also use 1 inch too for your back tightening. Moving over to the front, I used 3 inches for the neck width and also 3 inches for the neck depth. If you notice around the center front region, I left some allowance of about 2.5, and this would help us to create our buttonhole extension. But first of all, we need to determine our breaking point, or rather our break points. And the break points could be the waistline. You could do it at your under bust region. But for this tutorial, I'm going to be coming up by 1 inch above the waistline, so you could have your break points at the waistline or on the bust region. From that mark, I'm going to be marking about 1.2 inches outward, and this would serve as the button stand and also the buttonhole for this jacket. For the neckline, I'm going to be marking about 0.75 inches inward from the neckline that I have already drawn. Afterwards, I'm going to be creating like a U shape that would meet up with the extension I already marked. So you could mark 0.75 inch or 1 inches, but the more you mark, the wider the neckline is going to be. So guys, right at this point is where I'm going to be fixing my button and also the buttonhole too. For this part of the jacket, I don't want it to be straight, I want it to be slant, so I'm going to be marking from that point of the extension right back to my actual center front line. It could be more than that, but this is fine and okay for me. The next thing I'm going over to do is to take the midpoint of my shoulder slant, and I'm going to be connecting the midpoint to my waist dart. So this is going to be dividing my pattern into two. I would have the center front and the side front. I will also extend the waist dart all the way down to the hem line of this jacket so that it can be easy for me to cut. So guys, for the hem also, I don't want it to be straight. I want it to be a little bit slant, but not so slant, and I'm going to be coming upwards by 1/2 inch, which is what I'm going over to mark, and I'll connect it back to the actual center front line because that is my actual center front. And I'm also going to be doing likewise for the back also. For the back pattern, I'm going to be dividing the back into two, and to do that I'm going to be getting the midpoint of the shoulder slant and then just connect it straight downward to the hem of the dress, making sure that it looks equal on both sides. I didn't put a dart on this pattern because of the kind of measurements I'm working on, and because I've also done my back tightening, of which I use 0.75. So I would have my center back and I will also have my side back too. So this will split my back pattern into two. These are my pattern pieces, and I have the center front right here. I also have the side front, I have the side back also, and I also have the center back also. I'm going to be cutting all of these on both the fabric and also on the lining too, and that is what I've gone ahead to do. And I've also gone ahead to pin the side front to the center front. This is one part. Remember, the center front is going to have two separate pieces because there's going to be a button in the front, and this is the second panel for the center front. I also have the back pieces too, 4 in total, and I've gone ahead to pin them together. This makes it easier to sew. Now let me show us the lining. For the lining, especially for the front, I cut the center fronts using the main fabric, while I use the lining itself for the side front. And for the back panel pieces, I use the lining for the entire back panel pieces. And that's because for the front, it makes your jacket look really nice, and it makes it look really professional. So this is the back piece, and I use the lining to cut all of the panel pieces. For the sleeve, I'm going to be doing a basic sleeve for this jacket, and I have a detailed tutorial on my YouTube channel on how to cut a basic sleeve. Now moving on to the sewing, what I'll go ahead and do is to join all of my panel pieces together, and this makes it easier to do because I've gone ahead to pin them together. I'm done joining all of my panel pieces together, and I've also ironed my seam lines open. For the center front area, I ironed in a little patch of interfacing because of the button I'm going to be fixing there, and also because of the buttonhole I'm going to be doing, and I did that for the both panel piece of the center front. Also for the back, I've gone ahead to iron open my seam lines, and I did likewise for my lining. Because of the nature of the lining I'm using, I had to iron in interfacing along the neckline just to make it sturdy and so that it doesn't rip out. I also ironed in interfacing along the area where I'm also going to be fixing buttons on the lining. To proceed, I'm going to be turning each of these fabric pieces with the lining, and I'm going to be starting with the back, placing right sides of the lining against the right sides of the fabric. I will match it up and make sure that the neckline aligns properly. Now I must say that my lining is half an inch shorter than my main fabric, so I'll go ahead and sew it along the hem first of all, and then sew it along the neckline and sew a bit of it along the sides. I would also do likewise for the front. I will place right sides of the lining against the right side of the main fabric. It is half inch shorter, so I'm going to be starting with the hem first of all. Once I'm done, I would sew the center front region all the way up to the neckline and also to the sides, and this is what I have once I'm done. You can see the little bit turnover that I have there, and that's because my lining is half an inch shorter, and this is what I have for the back too. So the next thing would be to join the front and the back together, and to do that I'm going to be placing the right side of my front piece against the right sides of the back, and I'll go ahead and sew it in by my seam allowance and also join it in along the shoulder also. Let me state here that this is not the only way you can finish off a garment. However, I like this method especially when I'm working for a client because it is easier to make adjustments. Moving on, also remember I said I'm going to be joining it along the shoulder, and to do that I would open up my fabric pieces and match up and make sure that lining faces lining and fabric faces fabric, and I would go ahead and stitch this down. So guys, this is the outcome so far. This is what I have so far. I just had to pin it up to my mannequin even though the sizes are not the same, and this is what the jacket looks like. What I'll go over to do next is to fix the sleeve around the sleeve hole and also fix my button right over here, and I will be done with this tutorial. So guys, this is the outcome after I finished. I have my sleeve already fixed even though I haven't done my buttonhole, but I'll just go over and fix my button and also create a buttonhole on this jacket. If you have found this tutorial helpful, make sure you give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, kindly click on the subscribe button below, subscribe to the channel, and until my next video guys, make sure you have a wonderful day. Goodbye.